prices go up again. And an image again here of those demolitions we've been speaking about, we've been covering, agony of losing one's home. Investors count losses in the tens of millions of shillings after their houses were demolished following a court order. A bulldozer pulls down a house at a county area of Athi River, where demolitions were ongoing yesterday after a court ruled that the land belongs to East African Portland Cement Company. I suppose that's a good point as any to invite my panelists to weigh in. We have in studio Mark Buchachi, communication strategist, Ishmael Nyaribo, advocate and political analyst, and we also have in studio public policy analyst Arnold Maliba. We'll start with you, Mark. Your thoughts on these demolitions?
Well, it is always sad to see Kenyans lose their property in this manner. And it goes back historically to the fact that we've never managed how land is used, how land is grabbed, and how land is restored, because that's the biggest issue in this country, because we've seen many parcels of land being taken illegally. Now, what is interesting is that the government has never been consistent in how it deals with this. When I talk about government, I'm not just talking about the William Ruto government. I'm talking about governments all the way back from the Moi times. For example, you can see the squatters in the KU land are being given title deeds so that they stop being squatters, they become landowners. At the same time, you see those who are squatters in Portland Cement are getting evicted. At the same time, we know that many old families who have old members of their family whose leases have ended have seen their lands being grabbed by very unsavory fellows. So there is a big land issue in this country. It's a country of land grabbers. It's a country of people who demolish each other's land. It's a country of, you better hope and pray that your land is not on a road, it's not on a sewage plan, it is not on reserved land, And some of these people wish that Ferdinand Waititu would come back and would divert rivers to save their land. But at the end of the day, the issue is that this country does need to come up with a proper land policy, does need to deal with land grabbing and land grabbers, and justice must be justice for all. If they're demolishing houses of the poor because they grabbed land from Portland Cement, let them also visit the places in Karen where these politicians have homes and do the same thing for those who've grabbed large parcels of land in richer areas.
Assuming that they've grabbed land there.
It's not an assumption.
Ishmael?
It is a stated fact.
Yeah. You see, the problem with this actually is, the pain is how the Kenya Kwanza regime has completely taken a turnaround in what they promised to do. I mean, the president himself said, we will do a good negotiation between the person claiming and the person on the land, so that there is a win-win situation.
Yeah, that clip has actually gone viral of the deputy president.
Exactly. So that is the issue. I mean, the issue is not here that you should just go and encroach on somebody's land and expect that you will have the land at the end of the day. That is not the law. But the way people are removed from land where they have encroached, and they encroached when there was an OCS around the area, and there was the OCPD, then there was the National Land Commission for Public Land. I mean, all institutions were in place. So when you allowed them to go into that land, occupy it, and have their family settled there, and then all of a sudden you bring, now, this regime is bringing, I see the trucks they are using is CAT, cut. That time it was sunny, and everybody was really worried when you see those kind of trucks. So I think Kenyans should not be treated to this kind of misery by governments not being sensitive to the people's, aspirations and their plight. But one thing that really goes deep as a pain is, you promised, you will not do this, you did it. That is really where the problem is.
All right, so something that Ishmael raises, Arnold, is the manner in which the demolitions are being carried out, ownership issues aside, and the intended purpose of the land that is being reclaimed. Wavinya Ndeti talks about El Nino is right around the corner. You have Kalonzo Musyoka saying this is a human rights violation. Your thoughts on the subject?
I think if we're going to look at this, it becomes subjective of us to actually just focus on the manner alone. Because once it comes to the issues of land, and once it comes to encroachment, and human settlement, it's quite a messy stuff. It's one of those very difficult things we actually are going to, there's no better day. On this particular issue, there's no better day. Whether it's a rainy day or a sunny day, it's quite a difficult one. But let's begin with what really matters. The Supreme Court, in petition number 8 of 2021, already settled the issue of illegally acquired titles. Because in the days of old, what then would happen is that Olive here would find her ways around, mess up the system, and then get a title deed. And then once you waive your title deed, we will speak about the sanctity of titles, and then that is where it will stop. But the Supreme Court has totally settled that. In 2021, I think in a case by Dina Management versus the county government of Mombasa and a number of guys, including the lands ministry and the other officials, the Supreme Court then actually settled a problem we've had for quite a while. That so long as people have got title deeds, it was so easy to run around with them and say, they're legit. So how then do you bring out guys? Because I'll tell you, no one leaves any land once they have settled on easily. It's not an easy process. We've been around here. And if you walk back, you realize that as early as 2015 in this particular issue, there were notices. Kenya Kwanza was not even in government then. There were notices on this. But I can walk you back. You remember when we were doing development, when Nairobi was actually being redrawn, you remember Nakumatt going down at 3 p.m. on a Saturday as we tried to build Thika Superhighway. When Raila was the Minister for Roads and houses were going down in Karen. It is a recurring story in this particular country. But there's this attachment to land we have as a people. So when you hear about plot Maguta and people are running all over, you're going to Kamulu, you are going to Kiambu, you are going to Kajiado, everywhere. There's this an unholy attachment to land. And we are human beings. There's this thing, Olive, we are here as stewards. You can actually go to the beach. I'm talking about the...
I didn't want to take too much time on this because I would like us to look at other stories.
You're talking about the manner, but then we have to start from the origin. Okay. Because there's something called cause and effect. So before we talk about effect...
I think that one I'll have to allocate an entire show to discuss. But Ishmael Nyaribo, you'll fact check him on what he said about the Supreme Court.
Yeah, the issue would be, and let's have this, in sober way. Mm-hmm. Raila's time, Kibaki's time, that's okay. The issue at hand is you promised that once we are here, we will actually ensure that you don't go through this mess.
And what he said about the Supreme Court having settled this in 2021?
Yeah, that is, no, I already mentioned that if you had me clearly. I said that the law is very clear in terms of who owns land. It is presumed that the person named on the title is the owner of land. Okay. Of course, it can be, different if you go through a court process and prove that the name on the title was irregularly, illegally, or unlawfully placed there. But my point again, so that nobody misunderstands us, you promised. Once you have promised, please keep to the word. If you can't just be honest and say it is so difficult to keep word when you're in government.
That promise. Because sometimes we show up here and then we throw around words and claims, and then we don't have ways of going back to that. Is it policy?
I think you'll be best served to refrain from that, because the people on Twitter have already tagged you on a number of videos. The UDA government made the classic mistake that they campaigned without the consciousness of what happens if and when we win. The problem that Kenya Kwanza is facing is they woefully overpromised, and now they have no option but to underdeliver. But the issue is that Kenyans remember when those houses were going down. We remember how much there was complaints when houses were demolished somewhere in Eastlands, and how they were saying that the government then was insensitive and uncaring. Now, this issue, because we have to be very sober, there is a big issue in terms of fake land, fake title deeds, and there's a land issue, and it needs to be sorted. Honestly, I feel very bad for those who lost their houses. I feel very sad that they've lost money. They've been taken from the top to the bottom. All that I feel sorry for. But the government has to do what the government has to do. On that I agree 100%. But did this government in its campaigns promise not to do such things? Yes, they promised not to do it. Just the same way as they promised not to touch KU land, they've gone back on that as well. And it's not a problem. We understand. Even the good Bishop Sapit told them to just be realistic now and tell us the truth.
All right, so we need to take a break, but I'm seeing here